Hello.
Good morning. This is John Romer.
John, can you hear me? This is Tim with McKinstry.
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. That helps my attitude. Thank you.
Good.
Hello, everyone. How are we?
Hey, Tiffany.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hey, so fair warning, this is our first Zoom in this format, and Jody has been doing an awesome job so far. So hopefully we don't have any issues, but we might be just a couple of minutes late getting everybody in and getting started, but Jody's on it and she's gonna be great. I know it.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jody.
I think it seems like we're only missing Pat Korick. Does anyone know if he's going to be joining? Otherwise, everything is live. We're streaming, and we are good to start the meeting.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, just a second. Okay. It is 12:02 p.m. on December 8th, 2020. This is Joe Easton, Chair of the Missoula Parking Commission, and I'll call the December meeting to order. Jody, would you begin with attendance, please?
Yes, sorry. John Romer.
Present.
J.R. Casillas.
Present.
Linda Bradshaw.
Present.
Tiffany Brander.
Present.
And Joe Easton.
Present.
That's all our board.
Okay, and we'll add Pat if he joins us.
Mhm.
Thanks for joining our meeting being held via Zoom webinar. When I call for public comment, which is the next item on our agenda, please use the raise or lower hand feature to let me know you wish to be recognized. Jody will allow you to talk and you'll need to unmute your mic. If you have joined us by phone today, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9 and mute and unmute using *6. If you are participating by phone, I'll call on you by reading the last 4 digits of your phone number. So now is the point in our agenda for public comments and announcements on items not on our agenda. Jody or anyone, do we have any public comment?
There are no public members in the waiting room or otherwise.
Thanks. Any adjustments to the agenda by Tiffany or a board member?
No, sir.
First item on our agenda for approval is the meeting minutes of our board meeting on October 13th, 2020. They were included in the packet that we got this week, so I hope you've read them. And any board member have any comment? I'll look for a motion then.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Moved by John Romer. A second, please.
I'll second. I reviewed them as well, and they were very thorough. Thank you.
They are thorough. Thank you. Any discussion or comment on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. I'm sorry,
Aye.
we're going through a roll call vote in this new seminar or webinar format. So Jody, roll call vote, please.
Linda, how do you vote?
I affirmatively.
John Romer, how do you vote?
4.
Joe Easton, how do you vote?
Yes.
And JR Casillas, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes. Number 6 on our agenda is communications and presentations. So I'll turn it over to Tiffany to introduce our presentation.
Thank you, Joel. So just over a year and a half ago, I was asked by city administration to participate in a selection process for procuring an energy service provider for the city. And through that process, the team with Chase Jones as our lead decided to move forward with McKinstry. And a master contract will be moving through City Council here shortly. So with that, as the energy services contractor, McKinstry will perform energy services such as investment grade energy audits and related contracts to provide for the installation and implementation of energy, water, and other operating cost saving measures at the city's facilities. So as a department with older facilities, as you all know, I suspect we will see quite a few recommendations for upgrades. And I'm really looking forward to working through that process with Chase on the city side and Reed on the McKinstry side. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Chase and Reed just to describe the program and its process in more detail. And Chase, if you want to start with intros, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Hello, everyone. My name is Chase Jones, and I have the privilege of serving as the city's Energy Conservation and Climate Action Coordinator. And as Tiffany said, I'm here with Reed Prison from McKinstry, as well as Tim Tolman from McKinstry as well, although I'm not sure I see him on the screen. So Reed, was Tim able to join?
Yeah, he's using my same link. He's on here.
He is. Okay, great. And if the board could bear with me for a second, we do have a brief presentation. And so I'm just going to share my screen. My apologies. The screen that I need always seems to be last. So can everyone see that okay? Great. So thanks so much for your time today. Reed and Tim and I are super excited to discuss with you the Parking Commission Board, as Tiffany mentioned, our energy savings performance contract process, as the Parking Commission is involved in the first step. In today's presentation, we're going to give you an overview of the background that led to the city choosing the energy performance contracting tool as a tool, an overview of the McKinstry company, their team and how they do business, and the basics of energy savings performance contracting, or EPC 101, if you will. We'll also go over what Missoula's scope of work will be for phase 1, of which again, the Missoula Parking Commission is involved with. We'll then go over an example of work McKinstry did with the city of Great Falls on an actual parking structure to give you a flavor of what will hopefully happen here in Missoula with our own set of parking structures. And then we'll go over the process and next steps. And finally, we'll leave plenty of time, hopefully, for questions and to hear from you. So for a bit of background, this slide is one that I presented actually in the pre-submittal conference when our RFP to select an energy services company was out for proposals. It was important then for those potential bidders to understand the city of Missoula's goals. And I think it's just as important now for you to understand those goals as we move forward toward the first parts of the fun stuff, the work. So I thought I would share. So as a review, those goals are, you can see them on the screen. We can accomplish so much with this energy performance contracting process. So we get to improve our facilities and performance. We also achieve tremendous energy efficiency and conservation. And with that go utility and maintenance cost savings, as Tiffany mentioned. Also, and as important, we improve the occupant, employee, and visitor health, safety, service, and comfort levels. And then finally, we can get our hands around better data and reporting coordination. So as you can see, this work serves multiple goals, and we obviously like that. In addition, and in synopsis, we think this is an important and smart step to take because we get to take a deep look at our buildings and facilities with the first step of this process, or the investment grade audit, or IGA. You'll hear there are lots of acronyms in this. We're also able to do big chunks of work at once that we normally wouldn't get to do all at the same time by just using the general fund, or in the case of the Missoula Parking Commission, their revenue. And we get to do those big chunks at a somewhat expedited timeline as well. On top of that, and this is a reason to select this tool, our financial risk to do this work is mitigated because of the contractual savings guarantee that results from the findings of the IGA. And Tim and Reed will explain this a little bit more. That gives us the option of very little to no cash outlay at the beginning to do this work, because those guaranteed savings often, and will likely in our case as well, pay back the financing or cost of both the audits and the construction retrofit work. So again, we think there are lots of wins here, and we're excited the Missoula Parking Commission is part of this first phase. Thanks for stepping up to be part of that right at the beginning. So with that, we're going to get into a little background of McKinstry and Performance Contracting 101. And so I'll hand it over to Tim Tolman at this point.
Thank you, Chase, and thank you everyone for allowing us to be here. Me personally, I'll let you know that I am 67 years in the state of Montana, born and raised here. Know half the people in the state by now, I would think, and probably many of you. So with regard to McKinstry is approximately a 50-year-old firm that was established in Seattle, Washington as a plumbing firm. As McKinstry grew and things got busier in Seattle, we went from typical design bid work into what is called design build work, where our clients would come to us and say, we'd like you to engineer and construct it, if you would please. And so it's a much more efficient way of doing work, and you don't get the pitfalls of design bid where you may get a low value contractor. As we moved on, and about 20 years ago, the same folks that we had been working with forever said, we have high energy bills, we need some assistance with that. We were in their buildings anyway, and so we developed what is called an energy services company, or ESCO for short. And so we started assisting our clients with projects that conserved energy while improving their infrastructure, their lighting, their HVAC, all of those sorts of things. And as Chase said, mostly paid out of the savings that were done through the improvements. To fast forward to Montana, November 1 of 2008, I used to be with a firm by the name of CTA Architects, and McKinstry intrigued me. And one day I got up on the other side of the bed. And so I started working in Montana, and I remember what they said was, well, you know the state, you know everybody, go build a business. And so I did what I think any smart person would do. I went and found good people. And fast forward now, I have found 19 good people in the state of Montana. We have 3 offices in Missoula, Bozeman, and Billings. And we do a lot of work here. We work almost entirely, 99%, with local contractors, as Reed will tell you a little bit later when we talk about the work itself. but we keep the jobs in the local community. We keep Montanans employed, as most of us are native Montanans. To give you an idea how much work we do, we've done about $75 million worth of this work in the state of Montana, energy-related work, and we have an additional $25 million on the cusp of being signed right now, so we'll exceed 100 million. So in a nutshell, and that's as quick a nutshell as I can do, I will give this up and let it go to Reed, who is much more intelligent than I am.
Well, thanks for the intro, Tim. I don't know if I agree about the much more intelligent part, but we'll leave that up to everybody else. As Chase said, you know, we're going to kind of do a 101 just so we can demystify what this energy performance contracting concept is, and then talk a little bit about what the process will actually look like, and then maybe, you know, talk about Great Falls as an example of a potential outcome for your project. So the facility economics slide, this one's really quick. We just want to look at that blue side of the pie chart, right? 50% of the cost of operating a building over 40 years is operations and energy, you know, and it surprises people a lot of times that first cost is as small as it is. And so this kind of defines our philosophy, right? If we can tackle that 50%, that's going to realize some tangible benefits to you guys as facility owners and operators. Okay, so this is kind of the financial mechanism of energy performance contracting. And, you know, what the graphic is showing is before EPC, if we think about that pie chart, that 50% is potential utility and operational savings that aren't currently being realized. So if we look at the second chunk of that, the EPC savings, we're going to address that piece and quantify it and then guarantee it to you and say, if we implement this project, here's the savings you're going to realize. And so once you implement that project and if you finance it, the part that we're guaranteeing in that third column now finances the payments for that improvement. So not only do you have an improvement, you also have it paid for. And so by the time it's paid off in that fourth column, you see that that chunk is now gone. It's continued savings, and that can go to your bottom line, to other things as you see fit. So EPC benefits, really this is a structural depiction of just the difference between a design build construction delivery versus traditional construction. And so if you've worked through any of these kind of construction project processes, you're familiar with hiring an architect, potentially an owner's rep. That architect might hire an engineer if they don't have them on their team. You know, you would then pull together documents, design documents, put them out to bid, hire the contractors that win the bid, and you have multiple different points of accountability throughout the process, multiple contracts, and it's just a little bit more of a fragmented process. And so on the left, energy savings performance contracting is design build. And so really you're hiring a single entity as your single point of accountability that houses all these capabilities under them. Now, we might hire someone like an architect if it's needed on a project, or we don't have, for example, civil engineers on staff, but they're still going to be under McKinstry as a single point of accountability rather than the city or the entity holding multiple contracts to multiple contractors or designers. So this is both a timeline and a structural depiction. So on the top, the design bid build standard delivery, you know, like I just talked about, it's linear, right? You hire someone and then you do a design and then you put it out to bid and then you hire the contractors and then they build it, right? And so it's one step to the next to the next. And so really what we want to emphasize here is you're seeing multiple steps being executed kind of in tandem as we can do it on the fly. And so part of that is during the audit, we're going to do preliminary engineering and costing at the same time. And so then we can go out and hire contractors, firm up that pricing, and they're already familiar with the design and can hit the ground running for construction. And so you have both an efficiency in a team being integrated, as well as compressing that timeline as shown by the length of the arrow there. Okay, so we've been throwing around the word audit, right? Really what this means is a detailed facility survey. And so this graphic shows kind of 4 different levels of detail that an audit might entail. And so this is, you can see at the bottom, the source is ASHRAE. And so ASHRAE is kind of an industry standard body that kind of defines processes, standards, specifications in the built environment. And so pointing to this, we have a kind of universal language and standard to talk about of what an audit might look like. And so when we do an investment grade audit, we're going to be in that level 2 and 3 category. And so what that means is we're going to be taking a very detailed look at your utility bills, making an energy profile of the garages themselves. Obviously, electricity is much higher than gas, but we're going to look at all of it there. And then we're going to basically identify any potential improvements, energy savings and otherwise, but definitely with a focus on the energy savings pieces. And it'll be a feedback loop. We'll show you what we've found. We'll talk through the advantages and the benefits of each one. And then with your blessing, we'll decide what makes sense to take to a level 3, so that we're being efficient with our time and the city's money to develop these things. And we'll take those projects that seem to make sense and we'll go to a very detailed level where we're actually doing final designs, illumination simulations, and giving you those guaranteed prices and energy savings so that you can make a final decision for project implementation. So this just shows, and Chase, did you want me to talk through this one or did you want to talk through this?
Sure. Reed, I say you go for it.
Okay.
This slide just demonstrates that the Parking Commission is involved, but with other city entities, and it's a package deal in this first phase. So
absolutely. And so, we've got, as Chase has got on there, there's 5 different groups, city departments that are included in this first effort, right? And so lighting is going to be a big emphasis on the parking garages. We're also going to take a look at your other operations as well. I'm sure there's some select heating and air conditioning, and maybe even some water use. But the main buckets, as you'll see across the top there that we look at, are a full building audit, a lighting audit specifically, and then a solar assessment. And so you can see by the check marks, which ones are a focus on each one of those different departments and assets. All right, so that was the boring process stuff. What does it actually look like and what do the numbers actually look like, right? So this was a project that we did about 2 years ago. City of Great Falls has selected us to do some energy work and design build work for them. And one of the projects they wanted to tackle was 2 parking garages. And so the first thing I'd like to point out is the picture. This is a mid-construction picture. And so you can see the first 3 floors have been replaced. The fixtures have been replaced, but the bottom 2 haven't. And so there's 3 distinct benefits here right away, right? First is curb appeal. That bright, clean light just looks nicer, right? It looks more modern. And so that is the first benefit. The second is not only does it look nicer, but it is brighter and it's actually easier to see detail and there's less shadowing. And so that becomes a safety and security benefit. The third is the energy savings piece that we've been talking about, right? We're seeing about a 50% reduction in energy use per fixture. So that's a very real amount of savings there. The snapshot below, I'll go through it just really quickly. On this garage, it was a $237,000 price. I guess that was for 2 garages, excuse me. And then the first couple lines in the table there, you'll see the savings. So there's 2 places savings come from. One is the energy savings and the other is the operational savings. And that is basically the material that they were paying for every year for failed fixtures. And so this is very independent per entity and per age of facility, but they were seeing a substantial amount of failed fixtures that were costing them a lot of money every year. And so that's that 23,000, almost 23,000 in savings per year that you see there. The second section is the cost per year. And so you've got a principal and an interest amount that you're responsible for. That's the liability each year, right? It's $20,000. Well, the nice thing there is that the savings are greater than the liability starting in year 1. And so what we would say is this is a cash flow positive in year 1 project, as in that net annual cash flow of $3,000. Not only are you paying for your debt service, but you're realizing that much back into your budget. And so that could either be used for further improvements that do not have an energy associated payback, or it can go right to the bottom line.
Great. And so just to go over a couple next steps, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. Like Tiffany said, to start, we're bringing both the master contract, which essentially defines our relationship with McKinstry as our energy services company provider. And then we're going to bring forward the first addendum for that first phase of investment grade audits. We showed you on the table there, of which the Parking Commission and those 3 structures are part of. We intentionally designed the master contract to allow flexibility for future addendums because we anticipate future phases. And so we're here to discuss that with you today. We're in City Council Administration and Finance Committee tomorrow to bring forward that master contract and addendum, and then the Energy and Climate team on Thursday. And then if all goes well in all of those, but certainly in the Administration and Finance Committee, then it will be heard and hopefully approved in City Council the following Monday on the 14th. And then we'll get going right away on scheduling interviews with the appropriate staff. There's definitely a qualitative part of the investment grade audit as well. And then obviously start to schedule that technical and quantitative piece of the investment grade audits for the parking structures that you saw, as well as the other buildings and facilities and assets in this first phase. And that'll begin immediately after the new year, likely. And as I understand it, and if Reed and Tim want to comment on that, that's a benefit to the city as well, as there are some pretty good prices on materials right now. And we can lock those in by moving forward very quickly after the new year. And so, in conclusion, we think this is a great move, and we hope that you do too. It's a great move because of all those benefits that we talked about. We can save some money, we can save some energy. I didn't talk about, because I rushed through, it will help us achieve some very ambitious energy conservation and climate action goals that the city has set for internal operations. It will also improve service, health, and safety as we went over, and we'll be able to do a big chunk of work with little to no cash outlay in the beginning, and be able to pay back that very good work with guaranteed savings, and those guaranteed savings mitigates the risk to the city for this work. So we think it's a good move. We think it's an elegant tool, and appreciate your time in this presentation. And now I'll open it up for questions or discussion.
Hi, this is John Romer. Thanks, you guys. I think I get it. I like it.
Awesome.
I noticed 2 prior screens earlier, it was like you were showing a checklist of scope of work or something. There it is. And I noted that solar assessment would not be part of the scope of work for a parking commission. I just kind of wanted to hear your comment as to why that was not a checked box.
Yeah, absolutely. We did actually consider it preliminarily. Chase and I discussed it a little bit, and we pulled in one of our solar consultants to just talk through what buildings and what facilities made the most sense. The Park Place garage already has some solar integrated to it. And then so that capacity is kind of filled already. The other two, you know, there is still possibility of adding solar to them. It's just that, especially on parking structures, when not included in the original design in the first construction, it becomes cost prohibitive pretty quickly. And so in this first group, we wanted to stay with the more solid solar bets. Now, not to say in the long term, it wouldn't make sense to reconsider, because there's definitely a lot of roof area and a lot of potential for an array, right? But it's just not as cost effective as some of the other potential facilities that the city has.
Okay, thanks.
And
Yeah, no problem.
Mr. Romer, that's a great observation and question. And I want to thank Tiffany and the Parking Commission and you as a board for that forward thinking concept on Park Place. That's our flagship solar array. And I get to talk about that all over the state and then some. So thanks for that. And again, in that schedule, you know, there is some qualitative work here, and part of that is interviewing key staff. And you know, if the board would like to look at solar on those parking structures, then that's something that we can add in for sure. So just wanted to point that out.
Absolutely.
Thanks, John.
Oh.
Any other questions for, go ahead.
I was just going to thank John for asking the questions about this is Glenda. Hi, Chase. How are you?
Hi, Glenda.
And so I would definitely be a fan. That jumped out at me right away, that I love the improvement with the LEDs and what that brings. But I was surprised not to see more of an emphasis on a shift to renewables, particularly with sort of a 15-month kind of financing available. My question that I have is, what does the return look like after the 15-month financing period is over? Like, what are expected expenses with the new system? I noticed there was sort of zero budgeted as an expense for failure of the new lighting system, which seems highly aspirational. Would be great, but it seems like there is going to be some failure. You're not going to go from $6,000 a month into the old system to zero into the new. So what happens after 15 months? Do you have that built out, what the expected return is and what the expenses are? And then along with that, maybe as a percentage efficiency and improvement, I wasn't clear on exactly what the environmental benefit was. I love the cost build out, but I didn't see what the expected environmental return was.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the great question. So I guess I'll address your last question first. This is purely a financial tool, and so I don't have the environmental benefits quantified, but we do have a tool that at the end in the presentation of all the measures we've identified, we will quantify each one of those for you. So you'll be able to consider that, you know, before implementation. I don't have it available today, so I'm sorry.
Sure. No.
You know, and then the savings from the energy will obviously endure from the day that you change the fixtures, right? That will keep going until those fixtures either fail or are replaced, right? The operation and maintenance savings that you're asking about does have a lifetime, right? And so we've got 5 years plugged into here, and that is really determined by the fixture that is installed. And so a lot of fixtures have that 5-year warranty. And so that's just the safe bet, right? Is that anything that fails in that first 5 years will get replaced by the manufacturer. Now, a lot of garage fixtures will have a 10-year warranty as well. And so those fixtures generally cost a little bit more, but if it pencils, it's something that we should definitely look at, because seeing $5,000 a year for 5 more years is real money, right? And so we want to consider that. So the duration of that O&M savings is generally dictated by the warranty of those fixtures, because we know for sure that you'll see that savings. At that point, we're not quantifying the cost to upkeep the system. We're saying that those are the avoided costs. And so it's not necessarily saying that you'll have a zero cost of maintaining that system. It's that we can no longer claim a savings past that year point. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think it would be more helpful, just from a cost benefit analysis, to understand what estimated true costs may be, not just, foregone expense, the system that doesn't exist anymore, but the expense associated with the improvements.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, I think it's great on the face of it, but I think it might be helpful to see a little bit more longer into the future and a little bit more comparison of, the new system versus the old system.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what we can do is when we get a little further down the path and we understand your operational hours a little better, and then have some potential fixtures that we're evaluating, what we can look at is each fixture has a rated life based on actual lab testing for failure. And so we can take that rated life versus your annual operational hours and kind of forecast, yeah, sure, here's where the warranty ends, but where do we think the real life is? Because LEDs are kind of binary. They either fail immediately and it will be within that warranty period, or they're going to be good for that extended life. But you either get a bad one or a good one, right? And so if we then do that life analysis based on your actual burn hours, that will give you a more, realistic expected life and potential upkeep costs.
And Glenda, this is Tim with McKinsey. I think your point's well taken. So I think moving on after the warranty period and things, we could add back into the cash flow some cost for what they're going to be. As Reed says, we'll have a better idea by once we choose fixtures, but that will give you a better idea of both the annual cash flow and, just as important, the cumulative cash flow over a period of time. So we can do that once we have more information. That's an excellent idea.
And Glenda, thanks so much for always supporting the environmental side of it. And I'm the Energy Conservation and Climate Action Coordinator. And in this presentation, I shortchanged that part. Perhaps I was a little nervous in the beginning, so I apologize for that. This is the first time we've given this presentation, but it's obviously near and dear to both me and the city as we've adopted these ambitious goals. And, I talked about the slide and the benefits and goals in the pre-submittal conference. One thing that the city of Missoula did a little bit different in our RFP process is we did put those climate action goals out front and put it on the same playing field as the financial paybacks and the energy efficiency and the service and health and safety levels. And so I'm pretty proud of that, and I'm sorry I didn't emphasize that more. I certainly will moving forward. But the way that this works is, that'll be part of the investigation in these investment grade audits. And then we get those findings sort of as a package of projects or what they call energy conservation measures. And, we've asked at least for some calculations around greenhouse gas emissions reductions, again, alongside those other findings, financial or otherwise, in the investment grade audits. And so while finances are important and paybacks are important, we'll consider those greenhouse gas emissions reduction along with on the same playing field as those other elements as we're choosing the mix of projects to move forward with, and then we finance those and we do those. That's the actual performance contracting stage. So thanks for being a supporter of that, and thanks for bringing that up. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Chase, I want to add one more thing, because we only touched on it in one sentence. And I think the other benefit that the Parking Commission will look at is just how much better lit the the garages are going to be. Energy conservation is wonderful, but for a safety factor, for people that are working late, for winter hours, for shoppers, for things like that, it's going to be better lit. We may even reduce lights and light it better, but it's going to be much better lit, and it's going to be a much safer environment for people to be downtown. I think that's a really important thing to mention.
And I would also highlight, kind of going off of that, if you just look at our existing garages, the difference between the crime and just unsavory behavior that happens in Bank Street and Central Park comparative to Park Place. Obviously, Park Place is a newer garage with a lot of different things to it, but one of the biggest differences is the lighting in that structure. And so I am really looking forward to a better lit facility, particularly in Bank Street, but Central Park as well.
Yeah, I might add that, you know, the discussions about better lighting in those facilities is a long-standing conversation with the commission. And this is the piece I think that I've been waiting for. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Any other follow-ups? JR, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I had the same question on the financing and the budget, but I think it's been answered now, so I'm good.
Mr. Tolman, do you have any other questions or comments for us as a board? If you know everybody here.
Well, Joe, I know you relatively well, so I don't at the moment. I'll say again, we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys, and if and should this happen, you're going to be awfully happy with the way things look.
Thanks for organizing this, Tiffany, and thanks, Chase, for pushing this through. And Reed, we look forward to the next couple of steps. No one
Thanks,
has
everybody.
any other questions or comments, we'll move on.
Mr. Chairman,
thanks so much.
Sorry, everybody. Hold on, John. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Just a follow in. What would next steps be? When would we have this in action items for our next meeting to vote on then, Joe?
I don't know the action items from this point. I think they have to go through council first.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so at this point, after conversation with city administration, I think the intention is to have this presentation today, answer any questions, but the overall contract will go to council, and then we'll just sort of filter into that process without a separate approval process for the parking commission. And then once we receive the information back and we have projects in mind, and we'll have that presentation, and that's where the action items will come in, at least in my mind. But if there's any different way that you folks would like to go about that, we certainly can. But at this point, that's the route that we're looking at.
Good.
Good, John. Okay. Thanks, everybody. You're welcome to drop off. It's a little easier to drop off when you're not in the room. And so thanks for being here, and we'll move on to our next item.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Our director's report is next, and I think that'll be part and parcel with our financial statement. We obviously have some individuals that will present some information and discuss where we are so far in our financial year. So Tiffany, go ahead and go through your report and bleed right into our financial statement.
Thank you. So I just really briefly wanted to just touch on an update regarding some staffing matters. So as you discussed in our October board meeting, we were moving forward with a recruitment for our parking enforcement officer, as well as a recruitment for our admin 2 position. And just due to the high number of COVID cases that were continually rising in Missoula County, with consultation with the HR department, I decided to go ahead and pull back from those recruitments, and they have been put on hold. So the enforcement officer recruitment, Jody spent a lot of time and energy and effort on that, and we came out with some great applicants and made it through the reference checkpoint. And at that point, we went ahead and suspended the recruitment. And our hope is to make an offer to someone as soon as we and HR feel comfortable doing so. However, for the time being, we're just going to continue operating with our 2 enforcement officers, 1 admin 2, and no admin 1s. From a budgetary standpoint, it makes sense. And also we're able to just sort of keep that going. And from a training standpoint, I just feel a lot more comfortable having that space. And that's where we're at with that. We have also moved, the office is and still has been closed to the public and open by appointment only. However, we've switched our admin team to different days, so that way no one is in the office at the same time. So we have one person coming in 3 days a week, the other person coming in 2 days a week, and then on their subsequent days, they're working from home, this is our first full, last week was our first full week, and it worked out rather well. So we're going to keep going with that, just with the intention of keeping everyone safe. We've staggered our enforcement officer schedules just a tiny bit. Really, the only time they interact is first thing in the morning. So we've staggered those so that way they're not in the same place at the same time. And same thing with maintenance. So just a little bit different than what we have been doing, but just taking some extra steps to make sure that our team is safe. And so as you can see, as we move on to the financial portion, Jim Gallipo was unable to make it today due to some last minute personal issues that came up. So the lovely Brenda is here from JCCS to help us out. And then additionally, Lee from City Finance is here to present some of the projections that I've been working with her team on, just based on our performance over the past 5 months to project into the future. And you've all received the financials. So I think, Brenda, if it's okay with you, I think we'll go ahead and start with you, and then we can move on to Lee and the projection sheet, if that works.
That sounds good. Did you want me to go ahead and show my screen with the financials, or does everybody have a copy of the dashboard in front of them?
They all received it. However, I don't think it would hurt to share the screen. Okay. Maybe head nods. Do we want a screen share? Yes, please. Okay. Thank you, Brenda.
All right. Let me know if you are seeing the financials. Perfect. Okay. So it's my understanding it's been a couple of months since you've seen financials, just to kind of give you a status update of where we're at with those. These are still in draft format as the Parking Commission and the city still work through the audit process. There have been some changes throughout this process. So you will notice my initial note here that the cash balance that is on our financials is about 112,000 higher than the city currently has. And this is due to some adjustments that were made throughout that process of preparing for the audit. And I received the updated reports. I just haven't had a chance to go through and identify those changes as of yet. But the majority of this difference is likely due to that merchant fee that gets captured at the end of the fiscal year during the audit process. So just wanted to make note of that. As next month when we pull the November financials, you'll probably see a significant drop there. So no other big changes as far as the assets go. Pretty steady throughout the last 4 quarters. Same with the liability side. And you will see here that accrued merchant fees, that's where we're accruing that expense every month for the merchant fees on the meters. And then they recapture that, or they allocate that expense at the end of the year. So we'll see the cash drop, and then we'll see this balance here drop as well. There's likely going to be some other little changes, but that's where the bulk of it's going to be.
I'm sorry, Brenda.
Yeah.
So you said up top that it was 112,000 that you think is the outstanding accrued expense owed. And then there's 180,000 in the accrued merchant fees. So is that just a factor of the timing of the collection of those, or is?
There's going to be a combination of various other items. So the net difference in the cash is 112. We will see a little bit of variance on the revenue side. So that's likely where that difference is made up. We are capturing the revenue on the leases as the money is collected, whereas it's reported on the accrual basis on the city financials. And so that's another adjustment that gets made at the end of the year as well on the Parking Commission financials. So the net of those two, you'll see. Yeah, good question. So when we look at available cash after our typical adjustments here, where we factor in the city contract and the accruals, the net available cash at the end of October was just over 1.1 million. On the income statement side, revenue for the month of October was 163,000. Year to date, we're just below budget by about 14,000, quite a bit below where we were at last year at this time, but we knew that going into the year, which is why our budget is lower as well. We have been able to maintain expenses really good. So we've got expenses for the month of October around 134. We're quite a bit below budget there, probably due likely to the situation we've been in the last 6 to 9 months here. So it's good to see that the expenses are staying down for the year. So year to date, after other income and expenses, we're at a net income of 23,000 for the year. We had a projected loss of 109,000. Any questions on where we're at with revenue and expenses?
Brenda, just kind of going back to the conversation we just had about savings on lighting, and I'm not sure if all of that lighting repair currently goes into the repair and maintenance bucket, but if we've spent 33,000 this year, it's about 3,000 a month in total repair and maintenance. Does that include the repair and maintenance of failed lighting in current parking structures?
I would assume yes. Tiffany can correct me if I'm wrong. We don't see the total detail of everything.
It does, yeah. Yep. Repair, lighting, any maintenance supplies, that sort of a thing is included there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know if you wanted to cover the rest of the dashboard. I'm not sure what Jim typically covers for you guys, so kind of going off the cuff.
Anything that you have that jumps out at you, I'm sure that Tiffany and Lee will get to this when we get to the projections for the rest of the year, but I'm interested in what makes up that most of that difference between what we had budgeted and our current positive result. It's a positive result, but I want to make sure I understand what makes up that $132,000 difference.
Yeah, and Tiffany, did you want to get into this a little bit more when we jump into the projection? I know you had some more detailed information in that spreadsheet.
Yeah, I think that would be an appropriate time to do so, if Lee would agree with that. Great.
All right, well, any other questions that you guys have for me on the financials before I turn it back to Tiffany?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So up on the top, where you're booking the credit card fees into, where to go? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I see those amounts, are those being estimated for the time being until they can be trued up at the end of the year, or is that how we're still doing that?
They are, yes. We go off of the budget throughout the year, and then they get trued up at year end.
Okay, so if you were going off of the budget, these are probably higher than they need to be.
Right. Yeah,
Okay, thank you. That's what I
you're
needed.
welcome.
All right, would folks like me to pull up those projections now?
Yes, thanks.
All righty. So Jessie Hogue, our chief accountant, pulled together these projections, and she did discuss this a bit with Jim before pulling these together. So we have the fortune of having two people involved in this that are not with us today. But I'll sort of walk through the summary of the projections and then let you know about the methodology and the rationale behind certain items. So she pulled this together really with an eye towards your bond covenants. Does the Parking Commission have projected revenue and expenses to be able to ensure that you can cover those bond covenants without worrying? And this initial pass actually is very positive. So we have one column here, which is your FY21 budget. Column D is our year to date. And keep in mind that a lot of the figures that I show you are going to differ slightly from what you just looked at with Brenda due to two reasons. The first and largest one is timing. It's all about timing and getting that information into the system. And the second one is that JCCS does some accruals in their reports that we don't have in the accounting software until the end of the year. So these are year-to-date figures through 12/2. And our projections are showing at total revenues of about 87–88% of budget. Expenses about 78–79% of budget. Leaving you with a 2.1 debt service coverage ratio, which is excellent. The requirement is, I believe, 1.25. So this looks like the Parking Commission is definitely heading in the right direction, even though you've been scaling back in some expenses and obviously seeing lower revenues come in. The methodology that was used for this is based on a few different types of methodology. She pulled in averages, average collections through the year, averages expenses through the year. We tried to be more conservative with expenses, for example. So if there wasn't enough information to do a really solid projection on expenses, we went with the budget. So that's just showing you bringing in more expenses, because we'd rather err on that side than make an assumption that you're actually going to have lower expenses than what you budgeted. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you, Lee. So just confirm for the rest of the board and for the public who may look at this later, the debt coverage ratio is off of current revenues and expenses, not necessarily our savings or our net cash available that we're holding in the bank. So it's a wonky thing that it took me a while to understand about our Parking Commission is our debt coverage ratio doesn't factor in our savings account. It's only our current revenues and expenses. And,
yes. And they are operating revenues and expenses. So none of your sort of unusual items or even capital outlay, capital expenses. And the reason that bondholders want to see this is because if they see that number declining, then they would, for example, ask the Parking Commission to consider increasing their rates, because it's basically just rate-based revenues and the operating expenses that those support.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, it took me a while to fully appreciate and understand that. So yay us, we're doing well. We have net cash available and we have ongoing we have current surplus and we have projected surplus. So any questions for Lee and Tiffany and Brenda? Earlier this week, Tiffany asked for my opinion. It wasn't really, she didn't need it, but she asked my opinion about granting the Downtown Association a ticket holiday or a meter holiday. And so what I knew about our numbers allowed me to encourage her to make a positive decision to extend to the Downtown Association those holidays over the next couple of weeks. So that decision was made. I told her it wasn't necessarily a board decision, but it's those kind of decisions that get made that I think these financial results allow us to do that. And obviously we deferred a lot of our increases, well, all of our increases that we had passed in March last year. So congratulations on our continued good work, Tiffany and Jody.
Thank you.
Anybody have any concerns or questions about our financial statement, or for Lee or Brenda? Okay. Lee or Brenda, anything else you'd like to add or ask us?
Just to follow up on the previous question about those variances there, just looking into detail of the year-to-date through October, the majority of that, there's a big chunk in personnel expenses. So those are reduced for the year. Also professional fees, repairs and maintenance, those are also down for the year. So those are the bigger areas that we're seeing a variance.
Yeah, we expected that. Okay, thanks. Anything else? I'll move on. We don't have any action items today. Any non-action anybody would like bring forward any new business or refer any old business? Our next meeting is in the new year, January 12th, 2021. I assume we are going to be, well, I guess I not assume, we're noon again and virtual, just to assume we're going to be virtual again in 5 weeks. Yeah. Okay, any other comments? JR, John, Glenda, thanks for participating. Tiffany, anything else to wrap up?
No, sir. Thanks to everyone, especially Lee and Brenda. I appreciate all of the help with the financials, and
Yeah,
I
I
hope
you too.
everyone has a great holiday season.
Thank you for saying that, for reminding me. Happy Merry, everybody. I will close the meeting at 1:02 p.m. on today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. You did a great job. It was very